It is now clear that we were wrong, and for that, I apologize.
Alberta Premier Jason Kenney last night after declaring a COVID-19 state of emergency in the province alongside much stricter measures and vaccine passports. This just 2 months after Alberta lifted most pandemic restrictions with some praise from the Conservative leader. And when Erin O'Toole was asked repeatedly this morning whether he still thinks Kenney handled the pandemic the right way, he had this to say.
All provinces have shifted and adjusted based on the various waves of the pandemic. But what the provinces have not had is a consistent and reliable partner in Ottawa.
Mr. O'Toole is still letting the anti-vaxxers within his own party run the show.
So with just a few days now to go till Election Day, will any of this sway voters? To make sense of the last few days, and because it's Thursday, I'm here but with At Issue. Chantal Hébert, Andrew Coyne, Althea Raj, and Elamine Abdul Mahmoud. Good to see everybody. Appreciate you being here. We're going to see a lot more of you in the days ahead. But this was an interesting development in Alberta, and one, obviously, that the Liberal leader seized upon. Is it the kind of thing that is potentially an opening for the Liberal leader? Is it troubling for Erin O'Toole? I'm going to start with you, Althea, because I believe you're following the Conservatives right now.
Yeah, actually, I do think it has the potential to change things. I mean, the Liberals have been trying to make the ballot box question, who can handle the pandemic better? Who do you trust to handle the pandemic? And Mr. O'Toole and Mr. Singh actually had been trying to make the ballot question more of a referendum on Justin Trudeau. And I think that the referendum question seemed to be getting traction. Like, you know, why would you give your vote to a leader who called an election only for his own personal gain? Like, the Liberals have not been able to get away from that. And yet, yesterday, with Mr. Kenney's admission that he got it wrong, that he regrets being over-enthusiastic of reopening, it puts the pandemic now front and center in this election campaign. And Mr. O'Toole has had a lot of difficulty, not just with members of his caucus, as that PAC showed. He himself is on the record endorsing Mr. Kenney, endorsing his reopening plan, and that is a very devastating attack at this time when many people may have died because Jason Kenney decided to reopen the province too early.
And it comes also on the same day, we should say, that Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe also had to put different measures in place and say he's also going to move towards a vaccine passport. Chantal, your thoughts?
And so did Blaine Higgs in New Brunswick, so I'm guessing the circle has been squared on this. It's not good news for Erin O'Toole, and I suspect that if it had been possible in light of rising cases numbers for all those premiers to wait till next week to do what they did, they would have. And it tells you how dire the increase in cases is that they could not because their own political situation was becoming untenable. It's damaging on two scores. These are allies of Erin O'Toole. There is no denying that, and they are coming late to the vaccine passport issue. But it also will feed into Maxime Bernier's rhetoric about freedoms being taken away and give more motivation for people who believe that to go out and vote for Maxime Bernier.
Okay, Andrew, your sense, you're in Calgary tonight. I'm not sure what you're hearing out there, but your sense of how this is playing out.
I think you have to separate logic from politics here. Logically, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for this to be attached to O'Toole. There's no doubt that Kenney screwed up, but lots of the premiers have screwed up in different ways of all different parties, because this was all within provincial jurisdiction, which the federal government was happy to leave to the provinces. The provinces were left to handle questions like lockdowns, questions like administering the doses of vaccines, etc. So that happened under Justin Trudeau's watch. You can't blame Trudeau for that, but you can't really blame O'Toole for it either. It's the matter of different jurisdictions. See, if we were talking about federal jurisdiction, or the federal role in this, we'd be talking about the failure to close the borders quickly enough. We'd be talking about the failure to stockpile personal protective equipment. We'd be talking about, the shutting down of the early warning systems and so on. So that's the logic. The politics is Kenney's a Conservative, O'Toole's a Conservative. In politics, guilt by association is fair game. And so there's no doubt that O'Toole is going to take a pasting for this.
Yeah, I guess the one caveat I would put forward is that Mr. O'Toole applauded Jason Kenney's management of the pandemic, which I mean, you know, maybe he does think that he did a good job up until now, but it seems like that's the connection point too, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that I don't buy that at all. I don't buy that it's not connected at all. I mean, earlier today, our CBC colleague Travis Dunraj had a Twitter thread that just kept on adding on and on and on about several different journalists who kept on asking the question of Erin O'Toole of, hey, why did you say that Alberta handled this pandemic better than the federal government did? And he had no answer to this. And it actually kind of made clear that the Conservative campaign really had one gear, which is that this was going to be an election about the COVID recovery. And now that the ballot box question is once again how to manage a pandemic that is still ongoing, and this, of course, has highlighted that again, it appears as though O'Toole is kind of struggling to find that other gear.
Andrew, you want it back in there, then Chantal?
Oh, I just the point would be, again, the logic is if you allowed Erin O'Toole to be prime minister, then premiers like Kenney would screw up. Premiers like Kenney screwed up under the current prime minister. It just doesn't actually make the connection.
Sure, Chantal?
Couple of points going back to this notion that Erin O'Toole did say that Jason Kenney had handled the pandemic better than Justin Trudeau, and he's got to live with that statement. Comes at a terrible time for him in the campaign, but that's too bad because it wasn't a fact that Jason Kenney had handled the pandemic better when he taped that thing. Second, yes, premiers who are powerful do have influence on the prime minister if they are of the same persuasion. And this is a federal leader who has been stating that he would never challenge anything that the province does, never challenge a provincial law. He also has to live with that. And third, blaming Justin Trudeau for calling a federal election to deflect blame. It's fair game to debate the federal election timing, but it has nothing to do with how Jason Kenney or Scott Moe have been managing the pandemic.
Last word very quickly, Althea, then we'll come back for one more round.
Yeah, there are three things I think that hurt Mr. O'Toole because basically Mr. Kenney yesterday said mea culpa on these issues. One is the vaccine passports, which Mr. O'Toole has refused to say whether or not he supports. One is the fact that he was trying to be, on both sides, not accept mandatory vaccination. And that seems like everybody's going in one direction, including the business community, and Mr. O'Toole's on another side. And third, I think this is the most devastating. He kept referring to vaccination as a personal health decision. Yeah. And Mr. Kenney yesterday said, basically, yeah, it's a personal health decision, but everybody else is implicated with it. And basically, this is a decision for which there are societal costs.
That's the kind of leadership and vision that Erin O'Toole is going to bring to the new Canada.
Vote for the Liberal Party for the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau that I knew in a long time because I was in the house with his father.
It's my favorite part of the campaign, when former prime ministers come out on the trail. Brian Mulroney last night supporting Erin O'Toole, and of course Jean Chrétien supporting Justin Trudeau. What do those endorsements, those outings say about this last pitch to voters? Back with me now, Althea, Chantal, Elamine, and Andrew. Chantal, this is obviously, a try to boost momentum and all sorts of things. But what does it tell you about the campaign, if anything?
I don't think you should put them in parallel. I believe Jean Chrétien coming out gives, and it's not meant to make you so nostalgic that you suddenly want to vote for one or the other. Right. It's meant to make Liberal or Conservative foot soldiers feel so good about their party that they're going to work harder to get the vote out. And I believe that is true of Jean Chrétien. That is the impact he has on Liberals who are working to get Liberals elected. Brian Mulroney is another proposition. In Quebec, I'm not sure that there is an organization to get the vote out, but he is popular. But west of Quebec, the problem with the Brian Mulroney outing is that there are many foot soldiers who see themselves as part of the Stephen Harper party, who are saying, what is happening here? Or where is this other successful prime minister who apparently has been consigned to watching reruns in his basement.
Andrew, I mean, you also wonder if it's trying to send or reinforce the message that Erin O'Toole is more moderate than maybe other Conservatives out there.
Yeah, I think the Mulroney thing may have been more aimed at the undecided voter, at trying to reassure people. I mean, this has been the whole Tory campaign till now, has been to try to reassure people that we've tamped down some of the more unruly factions within the party. We're squarely in the mainstream. We're actually not that much different from the Liberals, et cetera. And Mulroney was a highly successful Conservative Prime Minister, you know, back-to-back majorities. That's a good thing to be able to say. You know, sure. if you liked the Conservative brand, then maybe you'll like some of that association will rub off on the current crop of Conservatives. Particularly
the idea of progressive, but to Chantal's point, Althea, could it backfire? Could it actually upset some people?
Oh, I already know lots of Harper people who were upset by seeing Brian Mulroney out on the campaign trail for Erin O'Toole. I just want to say that I agree actually wholeheartedly with everything Chantal and Andrew just said. The one thing I will add, though, is speaking to Conservative incumbents in Quebec, where Mr. Mulroney did the outing in Orford yesterday. They believe that it's going to help them with nationalist Quebecers, that Mr. Mulroney can remind Bloc supporters that, you know, there once was this great big Conservative family where nationalist voters were included in there. And wasn't it great? Look at all the things we accomplished, from fighting apartheid to the Acid Water Treaty to free trade, when you were all in the big family together. And this is what we can accomplish together if you vote for a party that can actually form government. And so that was something that Conservative incumbents were really hoping that Mr. Mulroney's outing will do.
Yeah, I will say I know Harperites, people who are fans of Stephen Harper, who were pleased to see Mr. Mulroney too. So yeah, well, I don't know that everyone was upset, obviously. Elamine, and then I think we got to wrap it up. Yep.
I mean, sure. If you are a Harper Conservative, you might be pleased to see Mulroney. Sure, it's nice to see old friends, but also at the same time, Harper governed this country for a long time, and it feels like a really significant sort of absence to just kind of skip that altogether. And also, I don't think we should be awarding Erin O'Toole any points for subtlety here. He also said as much, right? He said that he is maybe trying to move the party away from what you might have come to think about it. And so I think if you're a Harper Conservative, sure, you might smile when Mulroney's on TV, but you can't be too happy with saying, hey, man, we actually managed to govern. Yeah. We managed to win a majority, need we remind you, as recently as just 10 years ago.
Does it, do you think, Chantal, if there's a real desire, as you all seem to agree, to reassure people, what does that tell us about the state of the O'Toole campaign?
It tells us something about Erin O'Toole, who ran as the anti-return of the Red Tories Mulroney style a year ago for the leadership, and is now happy to have Brian Mulroney contrast with Stephen Harper about the nostalgia in Quebec for the Mulroney era. Yeah, all these things are all true, but I guess you have to put into the mix the failure of the Meech Lake Accord, et cetera, et cetera. So no, there are not that many fond memories of great successes when you put that failure inside the mix for a nationalist Quebecer.
Okay, I got to leave it there. Thank you all very much. And people will be pleased to hear that you're coming back Sunday night before election night. And you'll all be here, of course, for many, many hours on election night. So thank you all very much. That's At Issue for tonight. You can catch me and my show, Rosemary Barton, live at 10 a.m. this Sunday. Again, we will have more of The National on Sunday as well, one last time before the polls close.